Commander Kim Tae gripped the armrests of his captain's chair as the bridge lights flickered red around him. The horizon's edge shuddered under the weight of massive tractor beams that had locked onto their hull just minutes ago. Through the main view screen he could see them dozens of alien warships that had appeared out of nowhere, their dark metal surfaces gleaming like the shells of enormous beetles against the Sir, we're completely surrounded, reported Navigation Officer Choi Han from his station, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. Sensors are picking up at least 40 vessels. Each one is easily 10 times our size. Kim Tae nodded grimly. 3 years ago, when the Horizon's Edge had left Earth's solar system with its crew of 200 brave souls, they knew they might encounter alien life, but the scientists had always assumed first contact would be peaceful, maybe even friendly. They had prepared for diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and scientific cooperation. They had not prepared for this. Communications coming in, Commander, announced Lieutenant Songmi from the COM station. It's not like anything we've heard before. The computer is trying to translate. A harsh, clicking sound filled the bridge, followed by mechanical words that seemed to scrape against their ears. Attention, primitive vessel. You have violated Vorthok territory. Prepare for immediate boarding and processing. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Dr. Parkman looked up from her xenobiology station, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of fear and scientific curiosity. Commander, their ship designs are incredible. Look at those energy readings. They're using some kind of biological mechanical hybrid technology. The ships almost seem alive. Before Kim Tae could respond, the entire bridge shook violently. Sparks flew from several control panels as the ship's hull groaned under immense pressure. Through the view screen, they watched in horror as a massive docking tube extended from the nearest alien vessel, its end splitting open like a mechanical flower to reveal rows of gleaming metal teeth. They're breaching our airlock. Security Chief Park Dong shouted over the alarms. Whatever these things are, they're coming aboard. Kim Tae stood up, straightening his uniform. All hands, this is the commander. We are about to make first contact with an alien species. Remember your training, stay calm, and follow my lead. We represent all of humanity today. The bridge doors hissed open, and what stepped through defied every assumption they had made about alien life. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, its body covered in a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like polished obsidian. 6 limbs moved with mechanical precision, 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws, and 2 powerful legs that clicked against the metal floor with each step. Its head was triangular, dominated by compound eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of the human bridge crew. Behind the leader came a dozen more of the same species, each carrying weapons that hummed with energy. The devices looked grown, rather than built, with organic curves and surfaces that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. I am Admiral Vorthak of the Vorthak Empire, the creature announced, its voice emerging from a translator device that seemed fused to its throat. For 10,000 of your years, we have ruled this sector of space. We have encountered 47 different species in that time. All have submitted to our authority or been eliminated. Kim Tae stepped forward, his heart pounding but his voice steady. I am Commander Kim Tae of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We come in peace, seeking to establish a colony on one of the planets in this system. We had no knowledge of your presence here. Admiral Vorthak's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Peace is a luxury for the strong, primitive mammal. Your soft, warm bodies are suited only for servitude or processing. You will surrender your vessel and submit to genetic cataloging before relocation to a suitable work facility. Dr. Parkman watched the exchange with growing fascination rather than fear. As a xenobiologist, she had dreamed of this moment her entire career, but something about the Vorthok troubled her scientific mind. Their exoskeletons, while impressive, showed signs of where that seemed wrong for such an advanced species. Dark patches spread across several of the alien shells, and their breathing, what she could hear of it, seemed labored. Commander, she whispered, moving closer to Kim Tae, look at their carapaces. Those aren't battle scars, that's some kind of biological degradation. They're sick. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. These weren't just conquerors, they were a dying species, lashing out at the galaxy in their desperation. The Vorthok Empire might be vast and powerful, but its people were slowly wasting away from something that was eating them alive from the inside out. The the holographic display in the Horizon's Edge Communication Center flickered to life, showing Admiral Vorthak's intimidating form towering over the assembled human crew. His compound eyes gleamed with cold calculation as he delivered what he clearly expected to be humanity's death sentence. Your species has exactly 72 of your Earth hours to comply with our demands, the alien commander announced, his translator crackling with static. Every human settlement beyond your home planet must be abandoned. Your colonial ships will surrender to Vorthok control. Your homeworld will restrict all space travel beyond your moon. Commander Kim Tae felt his blood run cold as the implications sank in. That's impossible. We have research stations, mining operations, and 3 million people living on Mars alone. You're asking us to abandon everything we've built in space. Admiral Vorthak's mandibles clicked dismissively. We are not asking, primitive. We are commanding. Observe what happens to those who defy the Vorthok Empire. The hologram shifted to show space around Earth's solar system. Kim Tae's heart nearly stopped as he saw the reality of their situation. Thousands of Vorthok warships had materialized in formation around every major human settlement. The massive vessels hung in space like dark metallic clouds, their biomechanical hulls pulsing. With ominous energy patterns stuck back on Earth, chaos erupted in every major city. News anchors struggled to maintain composure as they reported the impossible situation. In Seoul, millions of people flooded the streets, some carrying hastily made signs demanding their government fight back, others preparing for evacuation. Similar scenes played out in New York, London, and Tokyo as humanity faced its first existential threat from beyond the stars. The United Nations Security Council has called an emergency session, one news reporter announced over footage of military jets scrambling across the sky. World leaders are working around the clock to find a diplomatic solution. But experts warn that humanity's technological capabilities are centuries behind these alien invaders. Meanwhile, aboard the Horizon's Edge, engineer Lee Jun had been granted limited access to study the alien technology that now controlled their ship. The Vorthok, confident in their overwhelming superiority, saw no threat in letting a primitive human examine their systems. This arrogance would prove to be their first mistake. Lee Jun crawled through the maintenance tunnels that connected the human sections of the ship to the Vorthok control systems. His engineering training had taught him to look for patterns, and what he discovered made his hands shake with excitement and horror. The alien technology was incredible living metal that could repair itself, energy systems that seemed to violate known physics, and computational networks that operated more like biological brains than traditional computers. But underneath all this advancement, Lee Jun found something the Vorthok had tried to hide. Their ships were dying too. The biological components that made their technology so advanced were infected with the same plague that was killing the Vorthok themselves. Microscopic organisms were slowly eating away at the living metal, causing system failures that the aliens were desperately trying to repair. Their mighty fleet was literally rotting from the inside out. Dr. Parkman, you need to see this, Lee Jun whispered into his communicator as he made his way back to the human quarters. I've been studying their ship systems, and I think I know why they're so desperate to conquer new territories. Dr. Parkman met him in the small laboratory they had been allowed to maintain. Lee Jun pulled up his readings on a portable scanner, his voice urgent but quiet. Their entire civilization is built on biomechanical integration, but something is killing the biological components, the same thing that's making the Vorthok themselves sick. A plague that affects both organic and synthetic systems. Dr. Parkman breathed, her scientific mind racing. That's why they need new worlds, new resources. They're not just expanding their empire, they're running from extinction. Captain Hanso had been listening from the doorway, her sharp mind already working through the implications. Unlike the other species the Vorthok had conquered, humans had something unique. They thrived under pressure, while other civilizations had collapsed in despair when faced with overwhelming odds. Humans had a stubborn tendency to find solutions where none seemed to exist. Gather the senior staff, Captain Han so ordered quietly, and do it carefully. We need to meet without the Vorthok knowing what we're planning. Over the next few hours, as Earth's government leaders debated surrender and the Vorthok fleet tightened its grip around human space, a small group of humans aboard the Horizon's Edge began planning something unprecedented in galactic history. We're going to make the Vorthok Empire an offer, not a plea for mercy. Not a desperate attempt to buy time, but a genuine proposal that could benefit both species. It was a concept so foreign to the Vorthok way of thinking that they would never see it coming. Captain Hanso looked around at her engineers, scientists and explorers who had volunteered to risk everything for humanity's future among the stars. We're going to do something that no conquered species has ever attempted. We're going to save our conquerors from themselves. The countdown to humanity's surrender continued. But aboard the horizon's edge, a new plan was taking shape that would change the course of galactic history forever. The Eon de Captain Han So stood before the massive blast doors that led to the Putzog command chamber, her heart racing but her expression calm. Behind her, Dr. Parkman clutched a datapad containing information that could either save humanity or seal their doom. The past 18 hours had been a whirlwind of secret preparation, and now everything depended on the next few minutes. "Captain, are you certain about this?" whispered Engineer Lee Jun, his voice barely audible over the humming of alien machinery. "If they see this as some kind of trick, then we're no worse off than we already are," Han So replied quietly. "But if we're right about what we discovered, this might be the only chance either of our species has." The blast doors split open with a sound like tearing metal, revealing the most impressive sight any human had ever witnessed. The Vorthok command chamber stretched out like a vast cathedral, its walls alive with pulsing biomechanical networks that seemed to breathe and think. Hundreds of Vorthok officers moved through the space, their chitinous forms clicking against crystalline walkways that grew from the living floor. At the center of it all sat the High Command 5 ancient Vorthok, whose exoskeletons had grown thick and ornate over centuries of life. Their compound eyes tracked the humans' movement as they approached, and Han So could feel the weight of alien intelligence studying every step she took. Admiral Vorthak gestured with one of his forearms, and a translation device descended from the ceiling on a tendril of living metal. "Speak, mammals. The High Command has agreed to hear your final words before your species submits to processing. We expect this will be entertaining." Several of the Vorthok officers clicked their mandibles in what Han So had learned was their equivalent of laughter. They had clearly gathered to watch another conquered species beg for mercy, a spectacle they had enjoyed 47 times before. Instead, Captain Han So stepped forward with the confidence of someone who held a winning hand in a game of cosmic poker. "Honored members of the High Command, we come not to plead for mercy, but to offer you something no species has ever given you before." The laughter stopped. The massive chamber fell silent except for the breathing of hundreds of alien beings, and the constant hum of their biomechanical technology. "We offer you life," Dr. Parkman said, stepping beside her captain. "We offer you a cure for the plague that is destroying your people and your technology." The reaction was immediate and electric. Several Vorthok officers reared back in shock, their claws extending instinctively. The High Command leaned forward as one, their ancient eyes focusing on the small human with laser intensity. "Impossible," hissed the largest of the High Command members, his voice carrying the authority of millennia. "The consuming rot has defied our greatest scientists for 3,000 years. No primitive species could comprehend our biology well enough to— Your biology isn't the problem," Dr. Parkman interrupted, her scientific passion overriding her fear. "The organism causing your plague is actually quite simple. It's a parasite that feeds on the bioelectric fields generated by your biomechanical integration. We've seen similar organisms in Earth's deep ocean thermal vents." She activated her datapad, and holographic displays filled the air around them. The images showed microscopic creatures that seemed to shift and dance in impossible ways, their forms existing partially in normal space and partially in quantum dimensions. These organisms thrive in extreme environments where biological and mineral systems interact. Dr. Parkman continued, her voice growing stronger as she entered her element. "On Earth, we've been studying them for decades because they hold the key to understanding how life can exist in the most hostile conditions in the universe." Admiral Vorthak's translator crackled as he struggled to process what he was hearing. You claim to understand the consuming rot better than our own scientists." "We claim to have something you don't," Han So said simply. "Biodiversity. Your empire spans thousands of worlds, but you've conquered them all. You've never learned from them. Earth's oceans contain compounds that can neutralize quantum parasites, compounds that we've been harvesting and studying for medical research." The chamber erupted in clicks and hisses as Vorthok officers debated frantically in their own language. The High Command members turned their heads toward each other, their compound eyes flashing with rapid communication patterns that no human could follow. Finally, the eldest of the High Command spoke, his voice carrying a weight that made the air itself seem heavier. "If what you claim is true, why would you offer this to us? We came to conquer your species. We hold your homeworld hostage. We could destroy everything you have ever built." Dr. Parkman looked up at the towering alien, her expression filled with the kind of calm certainty that only came from absolute scientific conviction. "Because you're dying, and we have the power to save you. That makes us responsible for what happens next." Admiral Vorthak's mandibles clicked rapidly, A sound that the humans had learned indicated extreme agitation. You would, heal your conquerors. Captain Hanso met his compound gaze without flinching. We would heal our neighbors. The silence that followed was so complete that the humans could hear their own heartbeats echoing in the vast chamber. ENDDR. Park Min's hands trembled slightly as she carefully mixed the latest batch of synthetic compounds in the makeshift laboratory aboard the Vorthok flagship. 3 weeks had passed since the High Command had agreed to test humanity's proposed meal cure, and the results had exceeded everyone's expectations. Around her, Vorthok scientists worked with an intensity she had never seen before, the desperate focus of beings who had just been offered their first hope in centuries. The quantum resonance is stabilizing, announced scientist Korthmel, one of the younger Vorthok researchers who had quickly adapted to working with human methods. His exoskeleton, once mottled with the dark patches of the consuming rot, now gleamed with healthy bioluminescence. The parasites are retreating from the biomechanical interfaces. Engineer Lee Jun looked up from where he was installing a new filtration system into the ship's living walls. Dr. Park, the synthesis rate is improving. We're producing enough medicine for 1,000 Vorthok per day now. But he paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. We're going to need a lot more thermal vent extract from Earth to scale this up for their entire population. The challenge was enormous. The Vorthok Empire numbered in the billions, spread across thousands of worlds. Each individual would need regular treatments for at least 6 months to completely eliminate the quantum parasites from their systems. It would require the largest medical undertaking in galactic history, but something remarkable was happening as word of the cure spread. Throughout Vorthok space, Admiral Vorthok had initially tried to keep the information classified, but news like this couldn't be contained. Across the Empire, Vorthok civilians were learning that the primitive mammals they had come to conquer were actually saving their lives. The first sign of change came from the mining world of Zarian 7, where the reptilian Sorak people had been enslaved for over 2,000 years. When they heard that humans had chosen to heal their oppressors rather than let them die, something awakened in their collective spirit that had been dormant for millennia. The humans show us what it means to choose mercy over revenge, declared Sorak Elder Hishara during a broadcast that somehow reached every Vorthok communication network. If beings who faced extinction at Vorthok hands can offer healing, then we demand the same respect for our suffering people. The rebellion started small work slowdowns and peaceful protests on mining worlds, but as news of humanity's actions spread, it became something the Vorthok had never faced before, a coordinated uprising based not on hatred but on hope. Captain Hanso watched the reports streaming in from across the galaxy with a mixture of pride and concern. We may have started something bigger than we intended, she told her senior staff during their daily briefing. 17 worlds have now declared independence from the Vorthok Empire. The Kalani fish people have reclaimed their ocean worlds, and the crystalline Zethari have sealed themselves into their mountain cities. Dr. Parkman looked up from her medical reports, her face showing the exhaustion of weeks spent working around the clock. The cure is working faster than we expected. The Vorthok who've been treated are ... different. Their aggression levels have dropped significantly. I think the plague wasn't just making them sick, it was affecting their minds, making them more violent and desperate. This revelation explained so much. For 3,000 years, the consuming rot had been slowly poisoning the Vorthok's ability to think clearly, driving them to increasingly desperate acts of conquest as their fear of extinction grew. The Empire had been built not on strength, but on the madness of a dying race. Admiral Vorthok himself was the most dramatic example of this transformation. The towering alien who had once threatened to process humanity like livestock now spent his days in quiet contemplation, studying human philosophy and history with the intense curiosity of someone discovering a completely new way of thinking. Your species puzzles us, he told Captain Hanso during one of their evening discussions in the observation deck of the flagship. The stars stretched out before them, no longer a territory to be conquered but a universe to be explored. You had every reason to let us die, yet you chose to save us. Even now, when our empire fractures and our former subjects rebel, you continue to provide the medicine that heals us. Hanso gazed out at the distant nebula where Earth's sun was just barely visible as a tiny point of light. We've learned that survival isn't about being the strongest or the most feared. It's about being useful to others, about building connections instead of walls. The Vorthok Admiral's compound eyes reflected the starlight as he processed this concept. On our homeworld, we have an ancient word, Korthanala. It means strength through unity. but we had forgotten its meaning over the centuries of conquest. Your species has reminded us of something we lost long ago. Behind them, the sounds of construction echoed through the ship as human and Vorthok engineers worked together to install medical synthesis equipment. The alliance that had begun as a desperate gamble was becoming something neither species had expected. A true partnership between former enemies who were learning to see each other not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors in a vast and mysterious universe. The Eon Dether crimson sunrise over Kepler 4 for 2b painted the sky in shades that no human had ever seen before. Deep purples mixed with golden orange, filtered through an atmosphere that was slowly being transformed to support both human and Vorthok life. Captain Han so pressed her palm against the transparent aluminum window of the observation deck, watching as the first joint colony bustled with activity. 6 months after what historians were already calling the Great Reconciliation, below her, the New Haven colony stretched across the fertile valley like a living organism itself. Human prefabricated structures stood alongside Vorthok bioarchitectural growths, creating a cityscape that seemed to breathe and pulse with combined technologies. Transport pods glided silently between buildings on rails of living metal, while human hovercars shared the airways with Vorthok atmospheric swimmers, graceful vessels that moved through the air like dolphins through water. Captain, you need to see this, called Engineer Li Jun from across the observation deck, his voice filled with wonder. He was pointing toward the colony's central district, where something extraordinary was happening. In Domain Plaza, human children and young Vorthok were playing together in ways that defied everything anyone had thought possible just months ago. The Vorthok younglings, barely knee-high to their adult counterparts, scuttled around on 4 legs while their upper limbs juggled glowing orbs of bioluminescent material. Human kids chased after them, laughing as they tried to catch the floating lights, their voices mixing with the musical clicking sounds that young Vorthok made when they were happy. I never thought I'd see the day, Li Jun said softly. 6 months ago, we thought those clicking sounds meant they were preparing to attack. Now I know it's how they laugh. Dr. Parkman emerged from the colony's central laboratory complex, her lab coat stained with the rainbow-colored compounds that had become the foundation of interspecies medicine. She looked tired but exhilarated as she joined them on the observation deck, carrying a datapad that glowed with promising research results. The latest batch of treatments is ready for testing, she announced, her voice carrying the excitement of someone who had just made a breakthrough. We've successfully synthesized a compound that can help the Kalani fish people adapt to different water temperatures, and the Zethari crystalline beings want us to help them develop medicines for their silicon-based physiology. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. What had once been the Vorthok Empire had peacefully dissolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. The Galactic Cooperative, 47 different species, each with their own unique biology and culture, had come together not as conquerors and conquered, but as equal partners in a vast cosmic community. Scientist Kim Yu arrived at the observation deck, his arms full of reports from research stations across the galaxy. The Sorek people have just finished their first independent space vessel in 3,000 years, he reported with a grin, and the ethereal drifters from the gas giant colonies want to establish a joint research program with us to study dark matter interactions. The changes weren't just political, they were deeply personal. Admiral Vorthak, once the terror of the galaxy, now served as the Cooperative's first Minister of Reconciliation. His transformation from conqueror to peacemaker had inspired countless others to reconsider their roles in the new galactic order. The Admiral asked me to give you this, Kim, you said, handing Captain Han a small device that looked like a combination of human technology and Vorthok bioengineering. It's a communication node that connects to every world in the cooperative. He wanted you to hear something. Hanso activated the device, and suddenly the observation deck was filled with voices, thousands of them, speaking in dozens of different languages and communication methods. There were the musical tones of the harmonics from the crystal worlds, the subsonic rumbles of the deep dwellers from the cave planets, and the electromagnetic pulses of the energy beings from the plasma nebulae. But through the translator, they all carried the same message. Thank you, humans. Thank you for showing us that the universe doesn't have to be about conquest and fear. Thank you for teaching us that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. Dr. Parkman wiped away tears as she listened to the galactic chorus. Do you realize what we've done? We've created the first truly peaceful interstellar civilization in recorded history. Species that were enemies for millennia are now working together to solve problems that benefit everyone. Engineer Li Jun pointed toward the horizon, where the massive construction framework of the cooperative's first joint exploration vessel was taking shape. The ship was being built with technologies from dozens of different species: human engineering, Vorthok biomechanics, Sorok metallurgy, and innovations from races that most humans had never even heard of. That ship is going to carry crews from 20 different worlds, he said with pride. They're planning to explore the galactic core, searching for new forms of life that might want to join the cooperative. Captain Hanso looked out at the bustling colony below, then up at the stars that no longer seemed cold and distant but filled with potential friends and allies. The horizon's edge had set out to establish humanity's first colony beyond Earth, but they had accomplished something far greater. They had helped birth a new kind of civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. As the twin moons of Kepler-4 to be rose over the horizon, casting silver light across the peaceful valley, Hanso smiled at the thought that would echo through human history. Their greatest victory had come not from superior weapons or technology, but from their simple refusal to see enemies where they could make friends. The end.